Okay, so let's see if you have the math skills to figure out and solve this math word problem, which is the following. Kim has 29 coins of dimes and quarters worth $5.30. How many dimes and quarters does she have? All right, so that is the question, but we do have a multiple choice scenario here, and let's take a look at our answers. So A is 10 dimes and 19 quarters. B is 19 dimes and 10 quarters. C is 13 dimes and 16 quarters. And D is 16 dimes and 13 quarters. All right, now feel free to use a calculator, but if you have an answer, go ahead and put that into the comment section. I'll show you the correct solution in just 1 second. Then, of course, I'm going to solve this problem step by step. But before we get started, let me quickly tell you who I am. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And if you're frustrated with math, or if you really want to understand the subject, then check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, or if you just enjoy this content, make sure to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. All right, now before I show you the answer, let's take another look at the question. So it's pretty straightforward. So Kim has 29 coins of dimes and quarters worth $5.30. Now, some of you out there may not be familiar with the U.S. currency. I will explain this in the problem, so no big deal. But again, Kim has 29 coins of dimes and quarters worth $5.30. How many dimes and quarters does she have? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the answer. The correct answer is C, 13 dimes and 16 quarters. Now, if you got this right, well, you definitely get a happy face and A+. And if you're like, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I'm completely lost, well, no big deal. I'm going to go ahead and explain this right now. Okay, so again, here is our problem. Now, obviously, if you're not familiar with the U.S. currency, this is going to be confusing. So I'll explain this in just 1 second. But first, let's just recognize that we do have a multiple choice math word problem. So that means that we can use the answers potentially to help us out figure out what the correct solution is. Now, in this case, Kim has 29 total coins made up of dimes and quarters. Now, the value of all these coins is $5.30. So one thing that you could do here is say, all right, let's just take a look at our options. So A, 10 dimes and 19 quarters. Well, this is 29 coins. 19 dimes, 10 quarters, 29 coins here. 16 dimes, 13 quarters, 29 coins. So all of these here, including obviously the correct answer, have a total of 29 coins, right? So that's not going to help us. In other words, if we had one choice here that was like 19 dimes and like 2 quarters, well, obviously this is not a total of 29. But sometimes in math questions, there are obvious wrong answers. So try to eliminate those. But in this particular case, if you didn't know how to solve this directly, what you could do is say, all right, which one of these options is worth a total value of $5.30? In other words, if we kind of go through and let's just take a look at the correct answer, C. So 13 dimes and 16 quarters is the entire value of 13 dimes and 16 quarters worth $5.30? Well, it is because we can check the answer, right? So in other words, what we can do is say, all right, well, a dime is worth 0.10 of a dollar. Now, if you don't know that, that's an understandable reason why maybe you couldn't have figured out the solution here, but I'll explain this in just 1 second. But 13 dimes is going to be worth 13 times 0.10, okay, because a dime is worth 0.10 of a dollar. Okay, so 13 times 0.10 is 1.30 or $1.30. That's how much 13 dimes is equivalent to. How about 16 quarters? Well, a quarter is worth 0.25 of a dollar or 0.25 or 25 cents. Now again, I'll explain this in just 1 second. So 16 times 0.25 is 4 or $4. So $1.30 plus $4 is indeed $5.30. So you could have approached the problem this way, and if this is the way you solved it, well, that is fantastic. But let's suppose we did not have a multiple choice question. Well, some of you may not like that. You're like, hey, Mr. YouTube Math Man, now I don't know how to solve this thing. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into some algebra in just 1 second. But first, let's do a quick review of U.S. currency. All right, now I'm not going to explain everything, but pretty much for most of the world, different countries, you have, in terms of the currency, you generally have like a coin and a bill. Now the bill, let's start with the bill over here, is like a piece of paper. So in the United States, our lowest value for a bill is $1 bill. Then we have $5 bills, $10 bills, etc., etc. Now $1 bill is equivalent to 100 cents. So here, okay, we're talking about dollars, right? And then over here we have cents. So what is cents? Well, cents have to do with the value of a coin. So let's talk about coins. So again, we're talking about little round things that we put in our pockets. So in the United States, we have 4 coins. We have a penny, a nickel, a dime, and a quarter. So a penny is worth 1 cent, and notice the little symbol like so. And with a dollar, it is this symbol, okay? And then we have a nickel, which is worth 5 cents. And then we have a dime, which is worth 10 cents, okay? And then we have a quarter, which is worth 25 cents. Okay, so these are the coins in U.S. currency. And again, we have bills, right? $1 bill, $5 bills, $10 bills, etc. Now it happens to be that $1, okay, is equal to 100 cents. Okay, so if you had 4 quarters, you would have a $1 bill. So when you're thinking in terms of coins and bills, you want to be working in the same unit of measure, right? So typically, we're going to want to express the value of our coins in terms of a dollar. So 25 cents is worth how much of a dollar? Well, it's going to be worth 25 out of 100, right? Because there's 100 cents in a dollar, or 1/4 of a dollar, but 25 over 100 is the decimal 0.25, all right? So when we're working with values of coins, typically you're going to see things expressed as a decimal, right? So in other words, a quarter is 0.25, a 0.25 of a dollar, all right? So we got to be very careful there. It's not 0.25 cents. All right, so hopefully this makes sense, and now we can get into the actual algebra of the problem, okay? Now, I am going to be using algebra to solve this word problem because algebra is such a fantastic tool. But if I said solve the algebra word problem, if I said that in my little intro, a lot of people would be like, algebra? I don't even like algebra, and I especially don't like algebra word problems. So some of you, if I don't mention the word algebra, may just kind of look at this and try to figure out some sort of creative way to solve the problem. And that's what the whole point to my math videos are. It's like, hey, use the math skills that you know. And if you only know basic math, see if you can come up with a creative way to figure out the solution. But of course, if you know algebra, well, then you have like some math superpowers to solve this problem directly. All right, so let's take a look at the problem from an algebra standpoint. So Kim has 29 coins of dimes and quarters worth this amount. How many dimes and quarters does she have? So what are we looking for here? We're looking for the number of dimes and the number of quarters. So how many unknown values are in this question? In other words, how many things are we looking for to solve the problem? Well, we're actually looking for 2 different things. We're looking for the number of dimes and the number of quarters. So in terms of algebra, we may want to use 2 variables to represent these unknown values, right? And this is going to be the real key to solve this problem. So I'm going to let x equal the number of dimes Kim has, and we'll let y equal the number of quarters, right? So we're going to use 2 variables because the question is asking for 2 things, how many dimes and how many quarters. It's not just asking for one thing, so we're going to use 2 variables. Now, a variable in algebra is simply a symbol that represents a value, okay, or represents a number. Okay, so here we have 2 variables. Now, from an algebra standpoint, okay, just because x is equal to the number of dimes and y equals the number of quarters, well, we want to solve for these variables. Well, we're going to have to build some equations, right? So we can't just have variables and no equations. We need some equations to solve for a variable. But here is a very important point. So the number of variables that you have, typically, and I'm speaking in general terms, but it's almost always the case, the number of variables that you have, and in this case we have two variables, we're going to need two different equations to solve for two unique variables, right? So in other words, we just can't build one equation here to solve for both x and y. We're going to need two equations. So we need to go back to the information in the problem to look for relationships here to build some equations. So what's an obvious one? Well, Kim has 29 coins of dimes and quarters. So she has 29 dimes and quarters. So maybe like dimes plus quarters is equal to 29, right? Now this is the number of dimes and the number of quarters. But the value of these dimes and quarters is equal to $5.30. So we could write one equation like this, but then if we think in terms of values, so how much is a dime worth? Well, remember, it's worth 0.10 of a dollar, right? And a quarter is worth 0.25 of a dollar. So the number of dimes and number of quarters is going to be worth $5.30. Okay, so we're going to build two equations here using this part of the problem. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these equations. Now if you want to try to build these on your own, maybe pause the video, but let me go ahead and show you them right now. Okay, so the total number of coins she has is x plus y is equal to 29, right? So this is the number of dimes plus the number of quarters is equal to 29 total coins. Now this is the number, right? Not the actual monetary value. So what is the total value of all these dimes and quarters? Well, it's $5.30. So if she has X number of dimes, that is worth, okay, in terms of dollars, 0.10 times the number of dimes she has, right? So this is the value of all those dimes, and the value of all her quarters would be 0.25 times y, the number of quarters that she has. So this is the value. So the total value of the dimes and the total value of the quarters is equal to $5.30. Okay, so we have two equations here, and for those of you that know a thing or two about algebra, you should recognize that what we have is what we call a system of linear equations. Now to be precise, this is a two-variable linear system, but this is the type of stuff that you study like in first year algebra. Okay, so really at this point it comes down to your ability to solve this system. So we're going to get into that right now, but before we do, we're going to get into this, and that is an invitation to support my YouTube channel. Now I definitely need your help to continue to grow. And one thing about my YouTube channel that maybe you don't know, I started it like 14 years ago. I just, set up my channel, and guess what? I really didn't do much with the channel for, I don't know, many years. I mean, I posted a video here and there, but I didn't put a lot of effort into my channel. With all honesty, I was busy. But maybe about 7 years ago, 6 years ago, somewhere around there, I really started to take more interest in YouTube. And I really regret not posting earlier. And I started putting a lot more effort and work, and the results kind of show for themselves, right? I really started to grow my channel. And it's the same thing with math. If you do a little bit here, a little bit there, well, you're going to get mediocre results. So if you really want to understand math, you got to get immersed in the subject, all right? So whether it's math or YouTube, you're not going to really, do well in anything unless you're totally committed and you give yourself time, all right? That is the key to learning math, but really, you can't learn math if you don't have clear and understandable instruction. And that's what I try to do on my YouTube channel, is try to teach in a clear and understandable and interesting way. But I want to reach as many people as possible, so I need your help. And the best way you can support this channel is to literally hit that subscribe button. And if you're going to do that, hit that bell notification as well. And if you're interested in taking my full math courses, well, check out the links in the description of this video. All right, so let's get into this system because we do have a decent amount of work here. Now, how do you solve a two-variable linear system? Well, I have a ton of videos on this on my YouTube channel. And this is a huge topic that you need to understand in algebra, right? Now, the teacher in me wants to pause the video or actually kind of go off on a tangent and teach you everything about systems, but that would make this video too long. Now, here we have x and y, right? So we have to solve for both x and y. We have two equations in x and y, but we have some options here, okay? Now, typically from an algebra standpoint, there's two methods that you can use to solve this system. The first is called the substitution method, and the second is called the linear combination or elimination method. But both methods, from an algebra standpoint, the whole idea behind these methods is to build one equation in one variable. So in other words, if I had like 2x minus 1 is equal to 9, well, I could solve this equation because I have one equation and one variable, right? So here's a variable I can solve for x, no big deal. But if I have 2x minus y is equal to 9, well, I can't solve for x or y because I don't have enough information here. So what we want to do is create one equation with only one variable, and that variable could be x or y, doesn't make a difference, but we need to kind of manipulate what's going on here in order for us to be able to build one equation with one variable. And again, you can use both the substitution and or elimination linear combination method. Okay, so it's up to you, and if you understand these methods and if you want to just kind of see if you can solve this, we'll pause the video and see if you can actually solve for x and y. All right, so the first thing that I am going to do is I'm going to get rid of these decimals, right? So I'm just not like a big fan of having to work with decimals. So how can we get rid of these decimals? Well, notice if I move the decimal point 2 places to the right, I will clear the decimal, basically get rid of these decimals. I don't want to be working with 0.10, 0.25. So how can I move the decimal 2 places to the right? Easy, just multiply everything by 100, right? So as long as I multiply this, this, and this by 100, I can clear those decimals. Okay, so 100 times 0.10x, 100 times 0.25y, and 100 times 5.30 will give us this right here. 10x plus 25y is equal to 530. All right, so this is just as good as that other equation. So we didn't break the system here. We just kind of wrote it in a different way. All right, now at this point, you want to be thinking in terms of the substitution method or linear combination method. You need to know both methods, but in this particular case, I'm going to use the substitution method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve for the variable x in the first equation. Now, again, if you don't understand these methods, you got to do some algebra review, or maybe check out my Math Skills Rebuilder or algebra courses. Again, you can find links to those in the description. But what I'm going to do is use the substitution method. And the way that works is you pick one of the equations and solve for one of the variables. So here, the first equation, it's going to be really easy to solve for x or y. It doesn't really make a difference. So I'm going to solve for x in the first equation. So we have x plus y is equal to 29. So to solve for x, I need to subtract y from both sides of the equation. So this is going to be 29 minus y. So here is what x is equal to, and notice that I have parentheses around this difference, okay? Now the reason I'm putting in parentheses, you don't have to put them in, but from decades of experience and, when you grade as many papers, quizzes, test exams, like well over 100,000, and that may not be an exaggeration. Well, it probably is, probably is an exaggeration, but you get the idea, right? So I've just seen these mistakes, and I've made all the mistakes as well. So what I'm talking about is the following. If you put parentheses around your differences, this will help you avoid common errors, all right? And you'll see this as we get into the mechanics of this. So x is equal to 29 minus y in parentheses. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that we can build one equation with one variable. So if x is equal to parentheses 29 minus y and parentheses, well, the other equation that we have, 10x plus 25, y is equal to 530, I can replace this x, right? So I can replace this x with this stuff right here, 29 minus y, because x is the same thing as 29 minus y. We just equated the two right now. So we're going to replace this x with the parentheses with 29 minus y. Now this is where these parentheses come in very handy. I'm going to show you this work right now. So again, we're going to replace this x with 29 minus y in parentheses. Now, if we just wrote that as 10 times 29 minus y, what ends up happening without the parentheses, a lot of students or people will just multiply that 10 times the 29, which of course is 290, but that's not what we need to do. We need to take this 10 and distribute it to both the 29 and the y. And when you put parentheses around that difference, that's really going to help you avoid making that mistake. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the algebra right now. So we have 10. This was x, but remember x is equal to 29 minus y. So we're going to take this 10 and multiply both 29 and y by it. Again, this is the distributive property. Okay, so 10 times 29 is, of course, 290. 10 times minus y is minus 10y plus 25y is equal to 530. Okay, so this is going to be pretty straightforward algebra. So let's combine like terms here. So negative 10y, excuse me, plus 25y is 15y. And then for the 290, we're going to get our numbers to the right-hand side. We're going to subtract 290 from both sides of the equation. And when we do that, we're going to get 530 minus 290, which of course is 240. Okay, so we're down to 15y is equal to 240. So to solve for y, all we have to do is divide both sides of the equation by 15. 240 divided by 15 is 16. So y is equal to 16. Okay, now we need to go back and think about what x and y stand for. So remember, y is equal to the number of quarters. So if y is 16, that means we have 16 quarters, but we have 29 total quarters. So how many dimes do we have? Well, we have to have 13 dimes if we have 29 total quarters, and we have 29 total coins, excuse me, and we have 16 quarters because 13 plus 16 is 29. Now you could go back to one of the equations in the system to solve for x, but in this case it's so obvious and easy that, hey, you know, we must have 13 dimes if we have 29 total coins. Okay, so I covered quite a bit, and again, for those of you that aren't familiar with U.S. currency, I can assure you that there is an equivalent problem in euros or, you know, whatever currency you're familiar with. But the main idea here is the following. Okay, well, actually, there's a few. So the first is, you know, when you are trying to solve a math problem, for those of you that are still math students, you know, you have to kind of use all the information available. In this case, we had a multiple choice question, and as long as you, understand the basics of currency, you can just literally check each option, right? So don't forget about using these answers to help you, pick the correct solution, because your goal on a test is to get every single problem right, at least, pass the exam. So use the answer choices if you have a multiple choice situation. But if you don't, well, you're simply going to have to know the algebra. And in this case, a big part of the problem was recognizing that we had two unknowns, right? The number of dimes and the number of quarters. So two unknowns in your question should kind of signal sometimes, hey, maybe I need to use two variables, which means I need two equations, which means I'm going to be dealing with systems. Okay, so with all that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your math adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.